Welcome to the Unit Economics Podcast. I'm Josh Stabinsky. On today's episode, I sit down with Brian McMahon, co-founder and CEO of Pickle, a peer-to-peer rental marketplace built around the idea that the things just sitting around in our closets can function as income-generating assets. Brian started his career in finance before teaching himself how to code and launching what was originally a social polling app designed to help people make purchase decisions. But after noticing that users were consistently recommending items that they already own, he and his co-founder, Julia, pivoted toward a marketplace model focused on renting, lending, and reselling personal items. In this conversation, we get into what that pivot looked like in practice, the scrappy early days of photographing inventory in friends' apartments, personally completing thousands of deliveries across New York, and how an asset-light model shapes everything from supply dynamics to operational complexity. We also break down how Pickle generated its first network effects, lessons from fundraising, and how the company is thinking about expanding into new categories as it works toward unlocking underutilized consumer assets at scale. I learned so much from Brian, and I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. Brian, thanks so much for taking the time to do this today. If you don't mind just starting with a brief background on yourself, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name's Brian. I am the one of the founders and the CEO of Pickle, which excited to chat more about today. I was born and raised in Maryland, went to the University of Maryland, started my career in consulting and in finance at Booz Allen and then Blackstone. And now, I've been working on Pickle for about 5 or so years.
What led you from working in finance to starting an app? Did you have developer experience? Talk to me about what the actual months, weeks, days leading up to the launch of what would become Pickle looked like.
Yeah, definitely. So I had no prior development experience and honestly just really wanted to start a company. I think I've always wanted to start a company, be an entrepreneur. When I was still at Blackstone, I had just been thinking about a few ideas, kind of came up with an idea that I thought was at least good enough to pursue. So kind of did what everybody did, at least pre-AI coding tools. So the options at the time were you could either learn how to code and build it yourself, you could hire some contractors and have them build it, or you could try and find a technical co-founder. I wanted my co-founder to be Julia, who's my co-founder now, who is also not technical, did not have a network of other engineers that we could bring in right off the bat. I always thought the contractor route was a little silly because then you're kind of beholden to them and you have to keep paying them for them to keep working on it. And if something breaks, you have to rely on them to fix it. So I ended up just teaching myself how to code and started moving forward with the platform.
Amazing. What did the first iteration of the platform look like? My understanding is that what we see now today as Pickle is not what it started out as.
Yeah, that's right. So the initial idea was we were trying to help people make better purchase decisions through the use of social polling. So if you were in the market shopping for something new, whether it's a new suit or some shoes or a dress, you could post a few options in the form of a poll to a community of users with similar style preferences. And then those users would basically be able to vote on what you should buy. So it was kind of introducing social proof into the purchasing process. We launched that in the spring of 2021. We ran with that idea for about a year. I think we were at kind of an interesting point that, probably a lot of first-time entrepreneurs face where it feels like the business is kind of growing because you're getting more users on, but you're not actually retaining anyone. So is it actually really a good product? And then you fall into the next feature fallacy a bit. You kind of think, oh, well, it's just because we're not doing this yet. And then you roll out that and turns out that wasn't it. Julia and I were kind of looking at how we could improve the business. And what we noticed is in the comments of the polls, a lot of people were recommending items that they already owned. And it kind of set off this light bulb of what if we just let people rent, lend, borrow, and buy to and from each other with a strong community focus. And we kind of fell in love with the marketplace business model. Got really excited about the idea. We spent the next week or so pivoting the entire platform. And then we went live in May of 2022 with what we are today, which is a rental and resale marketplace. It's kind of like an Airbnb, but for things that you own. So we've started with women's clothing and accessories. We'll eventually expand out into other categories from there. But yeah, it's been a fun journey and definitely glad we made that pivot.
This might be a naive question, but were you able to migrate your user base as well, or did you have to start from scratch?
We oddly enough, a lot of our users from the initial idea were international. As a result, we weren't able to keep a lot of the users. There definitely are a few, obviously some of our closer family and friends, as well as just a few people in New York that had discovered the initial idea. I think some people that may have signed up for Pickle, the rental marketplace, I think they might not have realized that they had already signed up for Pickle, the polling app previously, and it kind of connected. Or sometimes there's like a weird bug where and we're looking into it kind of like, wait, why is this happening to this user? And it's like, oh, it's because they had actually signed up for the polling app and are now here for the marketplace. So there's a few users that had overlapped, but not many. We were effectively starting from scratch.
Walk me through what the very early days looked like. What was the first rental delivery like after you fully launched?
The lead up to the first delivery, I think it's important to tell the story of the first pieces of supply,
Yeah.
the first items getting onboarded to the marketplace. So, as with any marketplace, we went through the chicken and the egg problem, and Julia and I were trying to figure out how to solve that. One way is Julia would just go to all of her friends' apartments and she would go over, hang out with them one night, and basically photograph them in their clothes, and then Julia would just upload items for them. So we got some initial supply on that way. Something that's unique about Pickle is it's a dual-sided marketplace. So people that operate on the supply side, the people that own the items, can also operate on the demand side, as a renter or buyer. And so we felt that a lot of the micro and nano influencers located in New York would be pretty good customers and suppliers, basically. And so Julia invited a lot of them to a free photo shoot in Soho. So we basically told them, hey, just bring a couple of your coolest outfits to Soho. We have a photographer that's going to take free photos, and you'll be able to post them on your social media accounts. And when they were there, Julia would then kind of tell them about Pickle, pitch the idea, and even help them upload or get their accounts set up. And so that's how we got our initial pieces of supply. So a lot of these micro and nano influencers were really great because they had a lot of cool clothing. They were also looking for some passive income, while they continued to grow their brands. And then on the demand side, they had a lot of a need for additional outfits so that they could diversify some of their content. So that's how the initial supply got on there. Our first rental was actually kind of a funny story. So when we were launching the marketplace, we wanted to make everything as convenient as possible. So we launched a door-to-door delivery service. At the time, we didn't have any couriers or any money to plug into some of these courier providers. So Julia and I effectively just did the first, I guess, like 2,000 or so deliveries and returns. So we ended up taking about 4,000 subway rides throughout New York over the course of about 8 months, talked to all of the first customers. So on this first one, it was actually my birthday. We got an order that came in on a Saturday. We were really excited about it, and long story short, we were able to get the delivery in and had our first customer, which was awesome.
Did you find that scaling to the next set of 10, 100, 1,000 customers was simple? The idea of supply and demand in this case is really interesting to me. Like, this is a very unique instance of having to navigate network effects, not like your traditional network effect story. And so I'm wondering how demand and supply sort of balanced one another out early on.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I think, fortunate for us, it comes back to this dual-sided marketplace concept. And a lot of the early adopters, especially in New York, operated on both sides. So when someone heard about it and wanted to use it to rent something on the demand side, they would then get really excited. And it's pretty easy to think, oh, I just paid, $30, $40 to rent this. I could have made $30 or $40 if I was on the supply side and started uploading some of my own items. So we saw a lot of supply turn into demand and a lot of demand turn into supply in the early days. The network effects were interesting for a pretty long time. Kind of look at it, it's like, okay, we did 3 rentals this week. Let's have a goal of doing 5 next week. And then, okay, we did 5 this week. Let's have a goal of 8 next week. And I remember Julia and I would kind of sit together and set these goals that now it's like, if we went and did 20%, increase week over week, that's an awesome week. And at the time it meant, just 2 extra rentals, for example. So, it was kind of interesting looking back at some of those numbers and some of the goals that we were setting at the time, but it's just baby steps. And for a while we could track basically the network of friend groups throughout the entire customer base because we were going to a lot of their doors and we would ask them, how'd you hear about us? And they say, oh, my friend Hannah or what, whoever it is. And, our goal was really just to create the best customer experience possible because that's how people would talk about it. That's how people would tell their friends and that's how people would repeat as customers. And, over time that led to just more and more people posting online about it pretty organically and led to some viral videos that ended up kind of catapulting the business into a new phase of growth that led us to, a lot of where we are today.
Were you spending any money on marketing at this point, or was this entirely organic growth?
It was entirely due to organic growth. The main reason we weren't spending any money is we didn't have any money. We ran out of money a couple times. And each time we were luckily able to convince a friend, family, or even sometimes customers to write a smaller or medium-sized check. And we would take that and use it to support some of the operations of the business. I think when we got before raising institutional capital, when we got into some of the later days, we had collected a few angel checks at that point. Some of them from some of our more successful customers, which was kind of fun. And at that point, we started running I forget if it was $10 or $20 a day on TikTok ads. But paid has never really been a part of our approach.
This is such an interesting story to me and such an interesting product to me because to date, I've only talked to one other set of founders who have an app. Everybody I'm speaking with is producing physical products. And so you had very low overhead in terms of your costs, right? It's just the labor cost effectively and the hosting cost of hosting an app. Before we get into more of the current landscape, I'm curious how you weighed this business model at the time because you didn't have any inventory. And there's some obvious benefits in not having any of your own inventory, but there's probably some hidden constraints and some hidden costs. And I'm really curious how you were weighing that and how you thought about that approach at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. We've always been particularly interested in the asset light or no asset business model. Like you said, we still don't have very many costs. It's mostly labor and then we do more around marketing and growth now, but by and large it's just labor expenses for us and then the hosting costs, and we really like that. We still don't own any inventory. We don't really plan to. I guess we pay for an office now is probably the main difference in terms of those expenses. But yeah, the way that we were thinking about it is there's obviously pros and cons to owning and controlling the entire experience when it comes to owning and managing the inventory versus relying on owners of these items to control the experience more or less. And it is a major risk, but I think it's also a major opportunity. So like you said, it's easier to get the business off the ground and it's easier to scale the business. It allows us to be much more dynamic with our supply. So while most in the retail industry have to really forecast out what they're going to procure for the upcoming season 6 to 12 months in advance, we don't have to think about that at all. We have owners and suppliers basically on the platform that are very in tune. They're tastemakers. They know exactly what they like, what they want. They'll go out and buy it and they'll upload it right away. So that allows us to have kind of the trendiest selection of items in the market, which is really great. And, I think the key is, and companies like Airbnb have done this very well, it's empowering your supply side, in our case, owners, to deliver as great of an experience as possible. So really making them feel like an entrepreneur, like someone who is running a business here, and they want renters or buyers to repeat from them. So they want to deliver as great of an experience as possible. They want to have a 5-star rating on the app so more and more people will come to them. They want to be listed as a top closet, so on and so forth. And by doing that, you put the responsibility of the customer experience in the hands of these owners in a big way. And that's what we've chosen to do. And I think are always thinking about how we can further empower owners to deliver great experiences.
Were there any supply or demand shocks early on or any spikes due to seasonality? Or was it really smooth for the first year or so?
Yeah, we definitely see seasonality in the business as the business expands throughout the US. That gets smoothed out a bit. So, for example, in New York in November, that's historically a bad month for us. There's not a lot of things going on. It's kind of starting to get cold. People are home for a couple weeks for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's also not really like a big occasion wear holiday, which is what a lot of our business is right now. So that's typically, not a great month in the New York market, but we saw fantastic months in November in other areas like Miami, LA, Dallas, where there is just a bit more going on. So that's been really interesting to see. I wouldn't say were any big supplier demand shocks early on. I think, we always wanted more supply, especially when items would start to trend. So for example, if a celebrity wears a dress to some sort of a gala, the Grammys or whatever, and people really like it, they'll come and try and find it on Pickle. And we hope that we can have enough of those. They start to get rented back to back, those types of things. But that's kind of what we saw the most of early on.
So it's obviously not a sustainable business model to be hand delivering items via the subway. What did it look like to graduate from that distribution model to the next?
Yeah, so it was more so forced. I think we were excited to do it because we wanted to stop doing the deliveries ourselves. We got to a point where we were delivering from like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day, and then we would go home and spend like 9 p.m. to like 2 a.m. coding out and shipping whatever features or requests or feedback that we received from users that day. And, definitely got to be we definitely wanted to spend more and more time, behind the computer, whether it was building new functionality or the customer support burden, started to rise as we got more and more users. So we needed to be responding to a lot of that. So we basically were like, all right, let's make it to Christmas. We'll shut down the door-to-door courier between Christmas and New Year's when we're home with our families. People can still meet up in person to exchange, or they can still ship items if they want, but we're not going to do the door-to-door courier. And I think on the 26th, we just started to get blown up with messages of, how come the door-to-door courier is not available? Like, what do I have to pay for the door-to-door courier? All that stuff. It was really exciting on one hand because, we saw, wow, there's really awesome demand. Of course, now looking back, New Year's Eve is one of our biggest weeks. So I'm not sure why we thought we could shut down the the courier service that week of all weeks. This was the first year we were doing it, so we didn't necessarily know that yet, but it does feel obvious in retrospect. But yeah, so basically just kind of spent the rest of that day writing out the integration with delivery service provider aggregator that allowed us to outsource the deliveries to delivery service providers like Uber, DoorDash, Roadie, etc. And went live with that on the night of the 26th, and that's how we got all the deliveries for New Year's Eve, which was exciting. It was a good push to be able to do it, given we weren't physically in New York, so we actually couldn't go out and do these deliveries. But it was great to get that business that week, and pretty important for the business to graduate into doing that. At that point, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. What did it look like to expand into your second geography?
It was interesting. So, the way we were looking at the market, we felt like we had penetrated New York in a pretty big way, and then the next big one when you think about where this type of a fashion focused marketplace would thrive would be cities like LA and Miami. So we went out to LA and we started to launch there. It's a bit different. At the time we were kind of growing a new network, so to speak. The reason that we even felt it was the right timing is and we see this a lot as new markets start to pop up, which is people will start to ship in items from other markets. So in LA's example, they started to ship in a lot of items from New York and from wherever else people had uploaded throughout the country. And then gradually some of the renters or the buyers will realize, hey, like I just paid for this, I can upload my own items and make money. And that's how supply starts to grow a bit more locally. So we were pretty excited about that, and kind of noticed that as a trend, more and more supply coming online. And that's when we decided, let's go out and launch there.
Yeah. So that's sort of what I was alluding to earlier, and like the uniqueness of your specific network effect. I'm curious if that's just generally what's informed where you should be spending your attention and how you've continued to evolve geo to geo, or if there have been other factors as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say as we think about expansion now, what we did for the first couple years of the marketplace is we really focused on supply growth. And I think that's pretty necessary. Supply drives every marketplace. And at this point, I think we're pretty well known for having some of the best supply available. And you can get a lot of that supply very, very readily as well, which is really exciting. So at this point, we have about 350,000 items, probably closer to 400,000 actually, live across the marketplace that can get pretty much anywhere in the US in 2 days or less. If it's in the same city, it can be 2 hours or less. And what that allows us to do is now really focus on demand gen. So when we were growing on the supply side, we did tend to focus more on a market to market basis, just to try and grow supply density within those local markets. Now that we're focused on a bit more of the demand gen, we've expanded that radius, and we're really focused nationwide at this point, and we're seeing some really great results.
What percent of your renting user base is also renting their clothing out? Like, what percent of your user base is using both functions of the app? And has that changed over time?
Yeah, it's I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's a pretty sizable percentage. I think it surprised me every time I look it up again. As far as the percent of the user base that's actively renting in terms of, they're getting a couple rentals or a couple purchase offers a month, it's obviously a bit smaller, but we do have a good bit. I think it's close to 50% of people that have downloaded Pickle have at least uploaded items to their closet. It might be a little bit lower as we've grown and focused more on demand gen over the last couple of weeks at this point, but it was a pretty high percentage, and of course not all of them will get an offer. I think that's something we need to work on, is engaging more and more supply and getting more people excited about the monetization opportunities throughout the marketplace. But it is still an exciting trend to see.
Given that you are operating an app, you as a company have the ability to aggregate a lot of data in a way that a lot of the other guests I've had on the show cannot do. And I'm curious if there's any surprising use cases for your user data that you can speak to.
Yeah, we definitely collect a lot. What's really interesting is that we have a lot of data on very early trend signals. Pickle has become known as sort of a trend hub. So people come to figure out what's cool or trending in their market. When a particular brand starts to really get popular, people will come look at it on Pickle early. People come here to figure out what their favorite influencers are renting or what their favorite pickle closets are uploading. And they come in and shop in a very Pinterest-esque manner. A lot of times just trying to be inspired by things. It's pretty evident in our engagement statistics, where about 50% of our monthly active users are also weekly active users. So people are definitely doom scrolling or just browsing around on the app. So that data does allow us to indicate or identify trends pretty early on. So we will share some of that trend data of, hey, people are really interested in this particular brand or this particular style, or ski gear is starting to tick up at this time of year, and then kind of dive deeper into the what type of ski gear, what type of brands, etc. And we share that with media outlets as a way to further enhance growth. I think over time we'll think about ways where we can monetize some of that trend data, but we haven't done that yet. And of course, specifically talking about the trend data, nothing about our users or anything like that. Just some of the
Of course.
aggregated high level
Yeah.
information. I don't know if like how we'll sell it. I think, the ways I've thought about it is probably through some sort of a managed solution where we still host and control the data. But what we want to be selling is insights rather than just data. So that's how we're kind of thinking about it at this point. Likely something we'll get into sometime later this year, but nothing material right now.
Yeah. I guess let's talk about the current state of the business. For context, can you share a bit about like what your user numbers look like roughly like what your monthly or weekly active user numbers look like?
Yeah, we typically keep that pretty close to the chest, especially when we're not in a fundraising environment. We're in the hundreds of thousands of users, and are really excited about that. Like I mentioned, the focus on demand gen has really started to juice that even more, as we look at the best 20 days as far as user acquisition in the company's history. I think 17 of those have happened this year. So we're definitely seeing results from a lot of really great initiatives that the different teams are working on. Our Growth Fellow program, or our ambassador program, we're getting more and more influencers excited about the platform, and they're kind of posting about it fairly organically. The biggest way that we grow is really just getting clothes on bodies. So when you rent something on Pickle, it's likely more of a statement piece, something that looks really awesome. You're going to be likely socializing. You're going out. You're looking good. You're feeling great. You're getting compliments, and people come up and say, I love that dress, or I love that outfit. I love that ski gear. Where'd you get it? And that's when they say, oh, I got it on Pickle, and they pitch Pickle for us. And those are really high value impressions. And so you can see the kind of natural flywheel that creates from a user growth perspective. And I feel like we're really riding that wave right now, which is exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. What did fundraising look like? What excited your investors initially, and also what gave them pause, if you're comfortable sharing both?
Yeah, of course. I mean, fundraising was not easy. We obviously, I think anyone when they're leaving to start a business thinks about this ideal scenario where I'm going to leave my job here. I'm going to, launch this thing. I'm going to, raise a couple $1 million within 3 months, and we'll be off to the races from there. There'll be no downturns. It'll just be only up. And yeah, it's obviously not what happened to us. So we went without salary for about 2.5 years, just trying to figure out what we were doing and what our customers really wanted. So the first year was obviously the polling platform, and then the second year and a half was growing this marketplace. And a lot of the feedback that we got from investors was it's just very operationally difficult. So whether it was not managing the supply or figuring out the exchange piece of it. And, I think people had seen this type of a concept before, whether it was with like tools or, just different categories. And what we heard a lot was people were really excited about this type of a thing, and everyone kind of felt like it should work. Like, you can share pretty much everything else, except for, things that you own that aren't like houses and cars, right? So why not make a marketplace for that? And it sounds great, but I think people were just worried about the operations behind it. And so what we did, we just kind of kept our heads down and focused on delivering a really great customer experience and trying to figure out how to make these operations work. I think anytime that people are that concerned about something, it is true. It's hard. It's difficult to operate. It's difficult to make, hundreds of thousands of people happy on both sides of a transaction. But that also creates a pretty big moat, which we're excited about. So we finally were able to find some pretty great investors. Jeff Fleur and Jeff Donaker were our first two that came in. Jeff Donaker runs Burst Capital. He was at Yelp for a number of years, and Jeff Fleur is at Kraft. He started StubHub previously, and his family had run a similar consignment type business. So he was familiar with the space and thought it was pretty interesting. And then Rick Heitzman over at Firstmark and Derek Chu over there as well, who had a lot of great experience. Rick, is a great investor, had been Pinterest early, had done a lot of marketplaces like Airbnb, DraftKings, et cetera. And then Derek had been in some pretty strong positions at Airbnb. So we basically just found people that got really excited about marketplaces and were really excited about what we were doing and kind of the journey that we took to get there. And, we've been working with them since and couldn't be happier. What got them excited was just talking to customers. They started just chatting with some of the customers that they were able to get in touch with who, kind of raved about the platform at the time. And then it showed up in our numbers. Our net revenue retention was really high. Our repeat rates were high. Our engagement was really high in terms of daily, weekly, and monthly active users. And those were the things that by and large got them excited about the seed round that we did with them. And then also got them excited about the Series A that we also raised through a pretty similar set of people, added on a few additional investors, but was by and large led by the same crew.
I'm curious to know if you have a sense of how many people on the platform, if there are people on the platform who are or who appear to be buying clothing just to rent it. My understanding is you recommend setting your rental price at roughly 20% of retail. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if somebody's trying to gamify this, you could buy a piece, and if you rent it more than 5 times, you've more than broken even in theory. Do you see people engaging with the platform in that way?
We definitely see people that do that, especially when they see something that gets really popular, they'll buy it in a few different sizes. The way that we look at it is a lot of the people that are lending items out on the platform are buying them because they want to wear them and they think they're cool. And the status quo, or I guess like the pre-pickle process, was you bought it and you owned it at that point. And there was really no way to get a return on the investment unless you were willing to part with the item in terms of a secondhand sale. And we're giving them an opportunity to earn some passive income on that item in between wears, because if they bought it, because they thought it was really cool and they loved wearing it, they're probably going to want to wear it again. And so that's what we're really providing. We definitely see people that are power lenders or power owners that will be a bit more strategic. They also will reach out to us a lot and ask what's doing well on the platform. Speaking of a area where we can monetize some data is that trend data that we were talking about, and kind of recommending what to buy and like showing what's popular. I think will be really popular in some sort of a subscription to owners at some point. But yes, we definitely see that behavior, not amongst everyone, but and we're totally good with it. I think especially as the marketplace evolves and we launch some of the other categories, I think that especially categories that have probably slightly longer shelf lives, I think we'll start to see that more and more. And we would encourage it if it's allowing us to get really great supply and providing a better experience for the renters. Obviously, as we go, we'll continue to reassess, but I think it's a great thing.
Do you see any instances where influencers are listing items, or anybody of any notable figures are listing items on the platform, and they're able to charge a premium for those items? Are people gravitating towards specific owners?
Yeah, we do see that. So we have some, pretty prominent influencers on the marketplace. We have a few celebrities on there as well. And yeah, they can definitely charge a bit higher because people are interested in renting items or buying items from them. I think, as it relates to community, the influencers view it as a very great way to engage with their community and kind of promote circularity. So yeah, we definitely see that. But that also the same thing applies to just popular items. When an item starts to trend, or when a celebrity wears an item, even if people aren't renting that exact item, like the physical unit that person was wearing, just the style or the trend starts to become really popular and really in demand, and we'll see people start to raise their prices on those items as a result of that as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So let's say I purchase $1,000 dress, and I'm not going to do this, by the way, just thought exercise. I purchase $1,000 dress, I list it on Pickle, somebody uses my dress, and then it gets dirty and it's unsalvageable, or they lose it, or they just never return it. What sort of recourse exists on the platform to handle instances like that?
Yeah, so we have a pickle protection guarantee, which protects both sides of the marketplace. So you, as the owner, are protected against any damages. So the renter is responsible for any damages that may occur. We collect a lot of information on people renting on Pickle to ensure trust and safety across the marketplace. So especially for more expensive items, we even collect their identification and verify identity through a lot of the great tools that are out there today. And then we also have credit cards. So, we would charge back the renter for any of those damages and obviously reimburse the owner. And oftentimes most of the time we actually help them purchase a replacement. So it's a seamless process for them. And then on the flip side, if the renter receives something that's not as described or not in the condition that they wanted it to be, they would of course get a full refund, and we would work to get the item back to the owner. So trust and safety on the platform is definitely a huge focus area for us. It kind of makes or breaks the business, and it can make or break an experience on the marketplace. Luckily, we have a lot of really great advisors in this area. I think even going back to Jeff Fleur, when he started StubHub, I think they were one of the first kind of like online marketplaces that offered a guarantee, and it did wonders for business at StubHub in those early days. So we talked to him a lot about that and kind of like how we structure ours, and that type of advice is just really invaluable, and it's helped us make these decisions.
You mentioned that one aspect you care a lot about is the social element of the app. And I'm curious if you could give some examples of what the social aspects on the app look like, how you're investing in the social side of things, and if you can, maybe it's difficult to quantify, but if you could try to quantify in what ways it's been beneficial for the business to continue to invest in the social side of the app.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think the social side and social commerce in general, it's a difficult thing to crack. And I don't think that anyone, at least in the United States, has done it particularly well. I think social commerce is pretty popular over in areas like China, but nowhere in the US has been able to quite crack that code. And we think about it a lot. And I think, one of the things that is especially important to us is the community aspect of the platform. So, we provide people the ability to, direct message each other, to talk about, or to ask questions about an item before they might rent it. We have a looking for feed. So if you're in the market shopping for something, you can go and say, hey, I'm looking for XYZ outfits, whether it's a specific dress and you upload photos of it, or you're just looking for some inspiration and say, like I'm going to a wedding in Miami and, here's the dress code and here's the theme. And can you guys recommend some options? And then you can other people can post suggestions or comments and things like that. So we also have a lot of things planned as far as social and engagement goes that we're excited to roll out in the first half of this year. But I think it just the desire to understand what's cool and trending and what are other people wearing. I think it does drive a lot of purchase decisions, and social proof is a very real concept. We learned that in the polling from the polling platform when we initially launched, and we're definitely trying to lean into that in all types of ways. So been a big part of it. And like I mentioned earlier, it definitely shows with about 50% of our monthly active users being weekly active users. People are definitely on there and engaging and all that. And I think the more people are looking at products and saving products and creating wish lists, the higher chances you'll have to get an item in front of them that they're going to be really excited about and want to rent.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's apparent to me that the company's on an incredible trajectory, but the problems that you're facing are just evolving over time. And I'm curious today, what's keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been the most interesting part of the whole journey. It's, the problems don't go away; they just change. So once you solve one thing, it's kind of on to the next because you've now grown, by 100% since you started working on the last problem, and with growth comes new problems. So the things that keep me up at night are just making sure that we can deliver as amazing of an experience to as many of our customers as possible. And the goal is obviously 100%. Like we talked about earlier, though, with this type of an unmanaged, so to speak, marketplace, it can't always work out perfectly. Whether it's utilizing couriers or shipping providers, we all know that issues can happen with shipping, and trying to limit or minimize those issues as much as possible is kind of what is what keeps us up at night, and what we strive to make as seamless as possible. And in the areas that we can't, it's about the resolution of the issue. So if a shipping provider loses a package, which obviously happens very, very infrequently, we want to make sure that we can make it right and encourage the customer to try us again. So it's thinking about those types of resolution paths.
It's totally fine if you don't have an answer to this question, but I think it's always fun to hear. Were there any inflection point moments where something broke your way or something happened by chance that really altered the trajectory of the company? It's become apparent to me in listening to a variety of other shows and in interviewing a lot of founders at this point that that's a really common theme. And I'm curious if anything stands out to you or sticks out in your memory.
Yeah, I mean, I would say two big ones. The first is kind of our first viral moment, so to speak. We had been growing the business pretty steadily and had been really excited about the growth. We were about a year into the marketplace, and one of the influencers that we still work with today, her name's Jade. She posted a video that went absolutely viral. We woke up on a Monday morning and had a crazy amount of users sign up and new transactions and things like that. So that was definitely an exciting moment and kind of a step function change into kind of a new level of running the business. And I think was a very strong propellant towards our fundraising efforts. And then the second thing was, we used to give, and this is less of a growth trajectory thing, but more of a probably just like health or the unit economics of the business, if we will, to stay on trend with the podcast here. But we started off the platform by giving all new renters $20 off their first rental. And we kind of did that because, I don't know, we just kind of looked at like what worked for other marketplaces. And, I think companies like Uber kind of, just made subsidizing orders very, very popular. And we were talking to our investors about gearing up for a Series A fundraise. And, they kind of mentioned, hey, like, your CAC payback periods are right around like kind of where it's going to be like, okay, or like acceptable, but it'd be great to get those down a little bit. And so we kind of took a look at it. And at the time we didn't really have the bandwidth to create some super smart way of let's give credits to some people and not to others. And we honestly didn't even decide to run a test on it. We just cut off the credits altogether. So, instead of giving, $20 out per, each of the first order, we gave zero. And it actually did not impact conversion whatsoever.
That's fascinating.
Which was incredible. We still kind of see it today where offering credits or discounts and things like that, they don't really propel our business in any way. And I think the biggest reason why is when you kind of compare most marketplaces, if you think about like an Uber allows you to get from point A to point B. You've always been able to get from point A to point B. Uber just does it in a more comfortable way, but they charge more for it. It's a premium, similar to DoorDash. You've always been able to go pick up food from restaurants, but they bring it to you and therefore they charge you a premium. Well, with Pickle, you're actually able to get, an item that is probably more expensive than you would have been able to purchase previously, and you get it for a significant discount. I think those two factors there just lead to people kind of, they see, oh, okay, well, if I don't get $20 off, I'm probably still paying like, somewhere between $40 to $60 for this rental. That's better than the alternative of paying $400 to $600. So I think that's how our customers look at it. And it's really great for our margins. And I think sometimes our growth team probably wishes they could use credits or discounts as more of a lever towards propelling some growth. But I think it's still overall healthy for the business.
That's such a good lesson. Everyone needs to stop offering discounts. Is my takeaway.
Yeah. Or just look at why you're doing something.
Yeah.
And just because someone did it before you doesn't mean you need to do it, or doesn't mean it makes sense for your business is kind
Absolutely.
of the takeaway for us. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, to the extent you're comfortable sharing. We've talked about the idea of monetizing some of the data that you have access to. Your current way of making money is through taking a cut of each rental. And that's the extent of how you're making money today. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Have you explored other ideas like a subscription model for power users? And if so, what do the economics there look like? And I guess, again, to the extent you're comfortable sharing, what other avenues for driving revenue and expanding on your revenue model have you explored?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've explored a lot, and a lot of them will probably do in good time. I think what we're trying to prove out now is a couple things. One, that we can create and grow a really healthy business, that we can expand into new geographies and set off some of the same network effects or growth loops that we've seen in our current areas. And we're really just trying to deliver as great of a customer experience as possible. We'll definitely look at ways of leveraging, whether it's data or subscriptions around providing that data to owners, or potentially things like bundles or other things in the future. But it's not stuff that we're going to roll out in the next couple of weeks. I think the first expansion will likely be towards the second half of 2026 as we shore up some of the operations right now in the first half of this year.
What's something that you've changed your mind about since starting Pickle?
I would say I always felt when people talked about community, they were doing it because it was a buzzword. And running Pickle, you really do see why it's so important. We have a really awesome community that's really excited about whether it's being able to rent and find this amazing outfit that really just changes the amount of fun they have one night because they feel so confident and great wearing it, or people that lend items and are now making over $10,000 a month, and it opens them up to be able to do new things that and explore new business opportunities or parts of their life that they weren't previously able to. And then just how much people want to work together. And I think it just, like we chatted about before, it really helps with our trust and safety because people are communicating via DM and they're talking about kind of some of their preferences of rentals, and that type of just community feeling really helps propel this type of a marketplace. And it's something that we definitely lean into. We definitely try and cultivate in a big way. And I think we always will. And I didn't necessarily think that community mattered as much before seeing it in action and seeing how important it's been to us.
I think we have time for one more question. Where do you see Pickle headed 3 to 5 years from now?
Yeah, so we're really excited about everything that's been going on over the last couple of years, and excited to keep that momentum in 2026. I see us starting to expand into more and more geographies. So really expand throughout the U.S. and create some really positive tailwinds there, and then start to take Pickle international. I also see category expansion in our future. So the second most popular item rented on Pickle in 2025 was actually a high definition Canon camera. Not that we are promoting these use cases or anything like that, but our users just, kind of say, hey, I have this item, I'd be interested in renting it if I were on the demand side. So why not list it and see what happens? And we've seen that with things like luggage, and we get a lot of requests for things like ski gear. If you think about other items that maybe are a little too expensive to justify purchasing for 1 or 2 time use, such as musical instruments, camping gear, kitchen appliances, sporting goods and equipment, baby gear, all of these things. Our whole goal is really to unlock the billions of underutilized assets just sitting idly in consumers' closets. And I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have made some pretty positive gains in achieving that.
Yeah, absolutely. The possibilities are endless, and it also just dawned on me how much of a positive environmental impact this sort of way of life could have, which is really cool as well. Brian, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time today. If you want to share with listeners where they can find Pickle, please feel free to do so.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. This was great. We're on Instagram and TikTok at Shop on Pickle. We're also available on LinkedIn. You can download the app on the App Store or go to our website at shoponpickle.com, where you can browse through some of the products, or find our careers page if you're interested in coming to work with us here at Pickle. We're launching a new version of the app and the website towards the end of this quarter, and excited to get that out. So stay tuned for that as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you can stay up to date with the latest episodes. Thanks for listening.